imperial treasury. Through recent studies that have established the location of the perimeter walls, archaeologists now have a view of the entire ancient city of Naples. It was of modest size and completely encircled by a formidable defensive system of walls and turrets. Fortifications that withstood Hannibal and his elephants in 216 BC during the Second Punic War. From the walls, it's easy to imagine the dramatic scene as described by the Roman historian Livy. It took place in the area near the present-day Piazza Dante in the heart of Naples. Livy wrote, "The cavalry of the Neapolitan army succeeded with rapid sorties to sow confusion in the enemy ranks, and thus forced Hannibal to abandon his siege." Walking through the streets of Naples today, you can see in the features of the Neapolitans vestiges of the rich mix of races that inhabited this corner of Greater Greece during Hellenic and Roman times. Egyptians, Romans, Italians, Illyrians, and Africans were all accepted into the community founded by the Greeks. It was a cultural melting pot and an exciting place to live. Naples was only one of many Greek cities in Italy. Paestum, 97 kilometers to the south, was the location of a very important Greek sanctuary. We don't know exactly when Paestum was founded, but it certainly dates back to at least 600 years before the birth of Christ, and was founded by settlers from Sybaris, another city of Greater Greece. Paestum's place in antiquity is evidenced by these walls that surrounded the city. But the best indications of its importance are the great temples of the sanctuary built in the 7th and 6th centuries BC. At that time, Paestum was known as Posidonia, the Greek name for the city, in homage to the sea god Poseidon. This temple, incorrectly called a basilica by early scholars, is the older one. It was dedicated to Hera, the goddess of fertility and maternity. It was she who would watch over women when they were about to go into labor. The temple has 50 well-preserved columns that taper towards the top. The capitals and the decoration in general are in austere Doric style. About 100 years later, the inhabitants of Paestum built the so-called Temple of Poseidon just close by. Actually, we don't know to whom the temple was dedicated, but it's one of the best preserved in all of Greater Greece. It was symmetrical, with 6 columns along each shorter side and 14 columns along each longer one. The complex containing the 2 temples comprised the sacred area. At the time, the 2 stone edifices shining in the sunlight must have been a sight of rare beauty. Another great temple in the city is the one dedicated to the goddess Athena. This temple is quite unusual, since its external columns are in the Doric style, while the capitals of the columns around the cella, currently displayed in the Museum of Paestum, are Ionic. This is the first known case of 2 different architectonic orders used in the same building. In the medieval period, the temple was converted into a Christian church, as can be seen from the tombs inside. In the Forum is the so-called Italic Temple or Capitolium. It was the first temple built by the Romans after 273 BC, when Posidonia came under their jurisdiction, and was renamed Paestum. This temple was somewhat exotic. Its high base was different from those of its Greek predecessors. It was dedicated to the triad of divinities honored on the Capitoline Hill in Rome: Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. At the turn of the 1st century AD, the temple occupied a part of the pre-existing area of the Comitium, the open forum where the citizens held assemblies. It was packed with monuments, and in the distance can be seen the massive amphitheatre. Rites in these temples were performed under strict rules. Inside the Temple of Hera, for example, there's a large cellar with 3 naves and a split-level colonnade. In ancient times, only the priests and initiates were allowed to walk down the colonnade and enter the sanctified parts of the temple. Ordinary worshippers had to remain in the pronaos in front of the entrance. Every morning, the priests purified the cellar with holy water and made offerings of food and drink to the goddess. The door was the sole access to the cellar. The venerated statue of the goddess must surely have filled the hearts of the priests with awe and reverence. The temples at Paestum have always fascinated visitors. In 1758, the German archaeologist and art historian Johann Winckelmann made an in-depth study of the ruins. Artists and writers like the poets Goethe and Shelley included Paestum on the Grand Tour as part of their pilgrimage in search of beauty and history. Another fascinating Greek site not far from Naples is the small fishing village of Pozzuoli. It was founded in 529 BC by refugees from the island of Samos, including the philosopher Pythagoras, who were fleeing the tyranny of Polycrates. The liberty they won was relatively short-lived. In 190 BC, a Roman colony was built on the ruins that later became Pozzuoli. On the old Acropolis of the city, the Romans erected a temple during the age of Augustus. This was uncovered recently after a fire destroyed the church of San Proculo in 1963. Pozzuoli was the chief port of the region and became Rome's true gateway to the sea. There were docks here big enough for large cargo ships that could transport goods to all parts of the empire. Today, nothing remains of that grand pier. Only a 19th century print gives us a glimpse of its 15 arches. The commercial importance of the city is shown by the Macellum, the market, second in size and range of facilities only to the one in Rome. The Macellum also contained the temple of Serapis, a god of the Egyptian Greeks and patron of markets. In 1750, an excavation of the Macellum was commissioned by Charles IV, the King of Naples. It immediately encountered something strange. The columns were pockmarked up to a certain height with irregular holes. Studies showed that they were related to the phenomenon known as bradyseism, the slow rise and fall of the coast caused by the movement of the Earth's crust. The temple was thus at times submerged by the sea, and when it rose again, it was marked by these holes made by mollusks. The Macellum had a large rectangular portico measuring 56 by 75 meters, which enclosed the shops. It was a bustling marketplace. At the center of the internal courtyard was a round building, the Tholos, graced with marble statues. The market was a riot of Mediterranean color. a meeting place for many different races and languages.